to put up the.
Yeah, go ahead.
Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. My wish. The lover has to keep the wish of the beloved. My wish for my lovers is as follows. Do not shirk your responsibilities. Attend faithfully to your worldly duties, but keep always at the back of your mind that all this is Baba's. When you feel happy, think, Baba wants me to be happy. When you suffer, think, Baba wants me to suffer. Be resigned to every situation and think honestly and sincerely. Baba has placed me in this situation. With the understanding that Baba is in everyone, try to help and serve others. I say with my divine authority to each and all that whosoever takes my name at the time of breathing his last comes to me. So do not forget to remember me in your last moments. Unless you start remembering me from now on, it will not be difficult. It will be difficult to remember me when your end approaches. You should start practicing from now on. Even if you take my name only once every day, you will not forget to remember me in your dying moments. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Tar Meher Baba ki jai. Sorry, I joined late. I have a question that's been bothering me, or not bothering, but it's been lurking in my mind. Could you go back to PowerPoint, please, Karthik?
Oh, okay, sure.
The prayer in the previous
One
pages.
second. One second.
Very, very fundamental question. Why, I don't know why it comes so late, but better clarified than the first prayer. Bhakti.
Page 1?
I think it's on second, third page somewhere. It starts
Oh,
with
okay.
Go forward page by page. Oh no, prayers are not. Yeah, this one. So this prayer and rest of the teaching of Baba. Baba says you and I are one. But throughout this prayer, he says you are without beginning, you are without color, you are unlimited, you are indivisible. It talks about duality. Looks like it talks about duality. Perhaps, I don't know, I was trying to clarify in my mind why so much emphasis on you and I. Any thoughts, anybody?
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about it yesterday or something, but I was also questioning this. Why did Baba in Parvardiga prayer did not say, I am in the firmament, I'm in the depths, because he's avatar, he's God in human form. He could have said that.
Right.
But he's actually addressing, using the word you. I kind of contemplated on that. And what I do is, I actually subliminally use, whenever I read the prayers, when it comes to you, it implies your innermost loving self.
Okay. Good interpretation. Thank you.
It's very simple. I think that
is it your or our?
No, this is my interpretation. This is my interpretation. Because I used to wonder why did he say you? And the insight that came to me was this has been a couple of years, which is, see, we talk about our innermost loving self, OILS. Remember, Baba saying, you and I are not we, but one. I am God conscious, you are in the process. Okay? So, Baba, if you look at it from a top down approach, is the first drop soul who became God realized by the eternal avataric infinite consciousness. And number two is Baba is not God, Baba is God in human form because he's got an embodied form. And Baba is one of the avatars. He is the latest operating system, SOS, Save Our Soul Spiritual Operating System, or you can call it like MS-DOS, you can call it BOS, Baba Operating System. Or as Karthik had mentioned earlier, the Quaker Oats story. So I think coming back to your point, the you part is that there is no difference because all souls are like the rainwater drops which evaporate from the ocean as an analogy.
That's the
So
point.
the ocean of love,
Shouldn't it
Sorry?
have been we are without beginning and without end? We are without color, without expression.
Well,
Because you,
see,
Yeah,
you
how
and I are.
good
if we were a
point.
blade of grass,
And
if we were a blade of grass, which has what you call as group samskaras, okay,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we are all individuals. That is why he
Mm.
said in another way, we and you and I are not we but one.
Okay.
Okay, you and I are not we, but one. One means but one self.
Right.
So all these connotations like you, I, me, mine, we, this is all in the duality and during the waking state of consciousness. See, again, we have to go back to the 24-hour time frame and
Mhm.
understand that we are conditioned by the waking state as if it is 24 by 7. It's not,
Mm.
right? So every time we look at something that Baba talks about, if we always go back to the most original when, from which all this divine dream has started, because this is all illusion. This is Maya, the creator of illusion. The
So this
divine
prayer
dream.
is valid
Huh.
until we are in duality.
Jai Baba.
So keep praying like this.
that's what I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I was
Yeah.
going to. So I
Yeah.
understand your
Jai Baba.
interpretation, Kama, but I think
Huh.
this I would rather think that the prayer is still sixth plane, right? So we can
Yeah.
we
Prayer
can
is, yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Prayer is
So
for the path. Prayer is for the path. Because Baba
correct.
has also given the true meaning of prayer, that you only adore and focus on the good qualities and love for the God rather than asking Him for anything. That is one thought that comes to my mind. Other thing is that what we were thinking, reading in the chapters on meditation, that you focus on the master. So when you say that I am meditating on the master, there is always that's a duality, right? So and meditation is for the path till you have reached the seventh plane.
That's right.
So in
And
that
that's what
sense,
comes to my
yeah,
mind
you
as
are
well.
trying to imbibe and remember the qualities of God.
Helping
So
us to
that's
walk on the path.
helping us to become Him. Yeah, Jai Baba.
But in
Having
a
said that,
technical
I think
sense, this prayer is a Jnana Yoga prayer. Okay, it is a Advaita Vedanta kind of connotation to this prayer. Okay, it is about the formless aspect. It is not, and also I look at all the three prayers. Parvardigar prayer as a Jnana Yoga prayer from an Advaita Vedantic aspect. That the Nirguna Nirakar aspect of God. And then the prayer of repentance is a karma yoga prayer because we are doing action of thoughts, words, and deeds in our daily waking state. And then the beloved prayer is a bhakti yoga prayer. So we are doing a permutation combination of all three based on our sanskaras. Unless you have the gift of pure love, then you just do bhakti yoga. As simple as that. And prayer is also like, from my book, it is an initial thing, initiation when you're in the kindergarten. You don't have to pray. When you go into the meditative state, you are self-abiding. So yes, initially you have to pray and get imbibed in those attributes. But in the end, you don't need anything. You just we abide in the self. Jai Baba.
There's one more thought which comes to my mind, that when we say you, this is the attributes of the God Himself, right? You are
Yes.
such and such. You are such and such. So these are the attributes of the Lord Himself.
correct.
Until we are on the seventh plane, these are Lord's attributes. Once we merge with Him, these are our attributes, and we become
Absolutely.
one.
No, they are
Absolutely. Because
your
we are-
attributes even today. You are not aware
And
of it.
but they are covered by sanskaras. Yeah, okay. Yeah, taken. Happy about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, chalo,
Okay.
chalo.
Okay, let's move on. Sorry, I
Next
distracted.
one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
No.
Bye-bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
question. In fact, the last point I was going to make was maybe there is some reference because there is some literature about this prayer, right? Right, the Parvatigar prayer and its background. Maybe in that he talks about this second person and this duality approach. I don't
Well,
know. I'm just saying we
is
can look
there
it up.
any literature? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That'll be good
Yes,
too.
yeah.
Because see,
There is literature. I remember
this is
seeing when
very,
it
very
I
was.
think
fundamental.
The Parvardigar prayer came after the new life or during the new life. I'm not sure if we can do a Lord Mayor control F fine. because I believe the prayer of repentance came before the Parvardigar prayer, something like
Right.
that. I'm
It'll
not
be good
sure
to-
about the exact sequence, but definitely the Parvardigar prayer came during the new life or after the new life, something like that. You know, before you declared avatarhood or after he declared avatarhood, something of that sort.
So if you all, I mean, I'm sure most of us might have come across the reference also about how Baba says that his participation in the prayer, because he used to stand up in spite of his frail health and participate in the prayer, and he said that he has charged the prayer by his participation. So obviously, this is something very special, prayer, and maybe there's literature to support or throw more light on what Sunil's asking. I don't know.
I'll
Yeah,
try
just
and
to
look up
corroborate
if anybody else can
what
please
is
help. Yeah, thank you.
I just need half a minute just to corroborate what has been said. So the Parvardigar Universal Prayer was dictated by Baba in 1953,
Great.
and the prayer of repentance, as was mentioned, was done in 1952, and the Beloved God, a prayer for Baba lovers, was done in 1959. So at different points in time, these prayers were, dictated by Baba for, I mean, the reasons best known to him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just one one announcement before we go to the reading. So I hope you've all seen the assignment. Kama has put it on Telegram, which is clear. So please participate and do that exercise. It's nothing. You just have to do a control F, do some pondering, and then rereading, and then we'll discuss it Sunday. But anyway, it will be preceded Saturday, but it will be preceded by Ravi, who's said he's going to make a presentation on this. So, yeah. Okay, so let's get started. We are on page 256, and we are continuing from where we on the second part of that chapter. Ego subservient to master ensures his help. When the ego is entirely subservient to the master, it is not only spiritually harmless but indispensable and directly contributory to the spiritual advancement of the aspirant, because it brings him closer and closer to the master through the life of selfless service and love. The constant inward contact with the master that it secures makes him particularly amenable to the special help the master alone can give. The aspirant who renounces the life of an uncurbed and separative ego in favor of a life of self-surrender to the master is operating through this new subservient ego as an instrument in the hands of the master. In reality, the master is working through him. Just as an instrument has a tendency to get out of order while being put to use, the aspirant is also likely to go wrong during his working in the world. From time to time, the instrument has to be cleansed, overhauled, repaired, and set right. In the same way, the aspirant who during his work has developed new problems, entanglements, and shelters for the personal ego has to be put into working order so that he can move ahead. Need for recurring contact with the master. The aspirant who enlists in the service of the master may be compared to a broom with which the master sweeps the world clean of its impurities. The broom is bound to accumulate the dirt of the world, and unless cleansed again and again and given a new tone, it becomes less efficient in the course of time. Each time the aspirant goes to the master, it is with fresh spiritual problems. He might have got caught in new entanglements connected with a craving for honor, riches, or other worldly things that allure man. If he pursues these, he might get them, but he might be far from the goal of experiencing God on whom he had set his heart. Only through the active intervention of the Master can such spiritual disorders be cured. This task of curing spiritual diseases is comparable to the performance of an operation by a surgeon who promptly removes the very cause that had been sapping the vital energies of a patient. If a person develops physical ailments and complaints, he must go to the doctor. And if he develops spiritual troubles, he must go to the Master. Thus, recurring contact with the Master is most necessary throughout the process of spiritual advancement. The Master helps the
Karthik, I have a
aspirant.
question.
Sure.
So, you see, my wish, he says, do not shirk your responsibilities. And, so the question is basically with respect to the earlier paragraph that when we say a balance between spirit and matter, where do we draw the line? Because this is a practical dilemma in the sense that you have you have to do your work. At the same time, you also are inclined to do spiritual activities. So where do you draw the line? Or how can you know where to draw a balance?
Very.
I think there is no line. I think all the work that we do can be done spiritually. You don't have to do anything specially, actually. That's my thing is actually. Just remember him and love him. That's and any other activities that you are able to do, that's good. Reading, meditating, going to samadhi, that's helpful. But I don't think any special activity is really needed, actually. That's what is the beauty of Baba's messages. And I also love
Okay, thank you.
one explanation which was coming is the suffering part, actually, that treatment part, that was actually indicated in the message, actually, that we suffer when we are in Baba because he's curing us of the ailments, actually. So physical suffering is a part of the process. Jai Baba.
Yeah, agreed.
Physical
I
and
think,
others also, mental, and losing money or being cheated, getting cheated or whatever. So all that is part of the process, actually, because Baba is doing that for us for real good for us. Yeah, Jai Baba.
so my response would have been intelligent action, right? So nothing you don't have to stop, but you'll have to do all the things that we are learning. So it's a very long answer. You have to bring you have to erect the professional working ego. You have to do intelligent action. You have to practice all the principles, and there's no actual. So that will automatically balance the two, right? So, and in fact, I consciously avoid using the word balance because Baba uses the word adjustment between spiritual and material. So we'll master it, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jai Baba, to add on to what Sanjay just said, there is no line. First of all, we should not fall into the trap of separation or compartmentalization of material life and spiritual life. We have to understand what does it mean by material life and spiritual life, materialism and spiritualism. The way I look at it is, how do you lead a material life spiritually speaking, right? In terms of morals, in terms of the values, as Karthik was saying, it's not even balance is a good word, but adjustment, because each situation is unique. How do you use this balancing act? How do you adjust according to the situations, especially using the principles of violence and non-violence, because that directly relates to our daily action of thoughts, words, and deeds. The 6 principles of violence, non-violence, and of course, intelligent action and unintelligent action. All the people in the world are only doing 3 things when they wake up. Action of thoughts creates weak sanskaras, action of words create subtle sanskaras or strong sanskaras, and action of deeds creates powerful sanskaras. So within this conundrum, how do we, how can we be self-aware and do intelligent action? So I think this is again the Western educational system where we have been asked to compartmentalize, pleasure and pain. Suffering is a benediction. Baba said, suffering is the special prasad I give it to my dear friends. And as rightly said, suffering, physical or mental or both, is aspect of dissolving samskaras. Now it depends on whether you are spending samskaras or unwinding samskaras. And this is where Baba's, discourses and God speaks helps us. So what do you mean by loving Baba? Everybody says, oh, I got to remember Baba. What do you mean by that? Let's have some action plan here. The whole idea of remembering Baba is, as he says in My Wish, when you are suffering, you can say, Baba wants me to suffer. This is just mental gymnastics. Let's be very clear. Provisional working ego is a beautiful technique to pass on the blame to the universal self. I ask myself, why the hell did I get born? What is this nonsense called self-realization? When you're already self-realized, and then on the other hand, we know this divine game is an illusion. There is only Paramatma, waking state, state 2, and then you have Parapar Parabrahma, which is the unconscious sound sleep state. And then God wakes up and says, like, who am I? And here we are, all going crazy, So the question is that now we have reached the human being, we have Baba's literature. People have to be very, exemplify what do you mean by loving Baba? It's like saying, hey, Karthik, are you breathing oxygen or not? Are you breathing? You don't ask that question, you are breathing. The point here is that we are all breathing this because we love Baba. We are remembering Baba through reading. But we have to go one step ahead and say, hey, what is in it for me, in my day-to-day activity, And that is where all the prayers, My Wish, 12 Days of Realizing Me, I think that is what is about loving Baba, that we have to be very clear about. Jai Baba.
Completely agree, Kamaji. Jai Baba.
Sure. Let's continue.
Thanks.
The next subtitle is Each Resurrection of Ego Needs Fresh Surrender. The Master helps the aspirant in his own invincible ways, which have no parallel in the waves of the world. If the aspirant is to be the recipient of this help, he must make a real effort to surrender himself to the divine will of the Master. The personal ego, which the aspirant renounced in his first surrenderance to the Master, may reappear in a new aspect, even within the artificial ego meant to be completely subservient to the Master and create disorder in its smooth working. Hence, this new resurrection of the limited personal ego of the aspirant needs to be counteracted through fresh surrender to the Master. The series of successive resurrections of the personal ego have to be accompanied by a series of fresh acts of surrenderance to the Master. Last surrenderance is that of separateness. Progress from one surrender to greater surrender is a progression from a minor conquest to a major one. The more complete forms of surrenderance represent the higher states of consciousness, since they secure greater harmony between the aspirant and the Master. Thus, the infinite life of the perfect Master can flow through the aspirant in more abundant measure. Spiritual advancement is a succession of one surrender after another until the goal of the final surrenderance of the separate ego life is completely achieved. The last surrender is the only complete surrenderance. It is the counterpart of the final union in which the aspirant becomes one with the Master. Therefore, in a sense, the most complete surrender to the Master is equal to the attainment of the truth, which is the ultimate goal of all spiritual advancement. Jai Baba. So as many of you already mentioned, this is a very important chapter, which relates to the relationship between the pilgrim and the master, aspirant and the master. Any thoughts, any questions before we go to the next chapter? Nope, very good.
I just think you can highlight the last few lines there. Quite the last surrender is the only.
Yeah, from here, yes.
It's also very reassuring, actually, that don't lose heart, keep surrendering.
Yeah.
Even if something goes wrong, you do something there, which is not right, but still come back.
And also the practical
surrender.
aspect of
Yeah.
this jumping back again and again. That's the nature of our progress. So
yeah. So that's what Ravi many times mentions in the, that Eris told him, surrender again and again.
Yes.
Yeah. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Correct.
Jai Baba, I think as we all understand, this chapter and the next chapter are kind of connected and are very practical, chapters, especially dealing with our day-to-day life. One is that what came out from me is in the last paragraph, I was talking about surrender, which is one of the 7 realities. See, our mission statement was whatever we read, can we try to connect it to the 7 realities? It was one of our goals. So here the word surrender and the word attainment of the truth for the first or second, the real existence and the real love. So truth is intrinsic to God. So every time in discourses, we see different ways of approaching the goal and different ways of expressing what the aim of life is. Sometimes it's called existence, sometimes it's called divine love, sometimes it's called truth, sometimes it's called being, sometimes it's called spiritual infinity of the truth, eternal reality, or sometimes it's called the real everything. And then this word surrenderance also, if you remember in the introduction, this word is original word of Baba. There was never a word called surrenderance. So if you read the introduction, there is some interesting explanation of this word. And we also have the acronym LOSS. First comes love, then comes obedience, then comes surrender, and then sacrifice. And surrender, as rightly said, keeps happening all the time. And complete surrender, complete form of selfless service only happens in the 7th PM. So this chapter basically gives us the differentiation between material life and spiritual life. And that initially we are so focused on the material life, unless we go through joys and sufferings, we don't comprehend what is our destiny, which is truth realization. And then it talks about obstacles to advancement, which is basically, getting caught in duality, good karma, bad karma, selfishness, selflessness. And then analogy of the river is used out here. But then the most effective form, Baba says, the help of the master is most effective when the aspirant surrenders his ego life in favor of the unlimited life that the master represents. Complete self-surrender is most difficult to achieve, and yet the most essential condition of spiritual advancement is the decreasing of egoism to its minimum. So it has nothing to do with love, because love is always there. It is how we can decrease ego, which is what Manonash is, mind ego. So the objective of spiritual advancement is not so much works, but the quality of life free from ego consciousness. Again, it's all about the ego, how to dissolve this ego. That is the whole journey. How to remove this spiritual headache called the thinking mind ego disease. Because pure love, divine love is already latent within every being, the drop soul. So Baba has given the analogy of, the spiritual path is not for the faint-hearted. It's not like riding a saddle horse, or it's like running, Microsoft now. This guy, Matela wrote something about the particular book that inspired him to change Microsoft's culture or something like that. Great. Stock price is doing well. But the spiritual journey is different. It's like walking on the edge of a sharp sword every moment. So this is where self-awareness helps a lot. And then, of course, Baba has given how to construct this new ego. Very practical for the modern man who's got an advanced degree and is doing very well in his material life, but wants to adjust his material life and spiritual life. And Baba has given this technique of the provisional working ego, which is beautiful. And he also says that you can't just transition to an egoless life just like that, which is what yesterday was the debate about. You lapse into a coma. No, it has to be spontaneous, it has to be loving, it has to be organic, it has to be natural, and it takes effort. And spiritual advancement is usually gradual. That means we take multiple reincarnations to work on multiple sanskaras. And this is also given in reincarnation and karma when we come to those chapters. And of course, why do we go to the samadhi? Why do we go if Baba was alive? Why did people go to Baba when he was alive? Because he kind of, cleanses our sanskaras, subliminally speaking. I think part of the reason why you go to the samadhi, it's like a recharging station. Only thing is you don't want to get overcharged. Just staying there and thinking that I'm going to attain nirvana. No. I'm sorry to say this, but I saw the most, what I call, I didn't find people happy, the long-term residents of Niraba. So pardon my pun, but that's my observation. So that is why Baba said, I'm in your heart. You don't have to be coming to the samadhi all the time. You can come and go. Even if you come once, it's fine. And then it's all about complete surrenders.
I mean, all of good summary, all of that I totally agree with, but I have to express the disappointment that we don't have the physical form. See, lot of the ambiguity that exists, a lot of the questions that we have, and we are doing things thinking that we are doing it in the right manner, could be course corrected with physical presence and intervention of a master, which we are missing. So the last chapter, of course, has painfully reminded me of that, and I'm sure this would also talk about it. So anyway, we have no option.
Karthik?
Yeah.
Karthik, even if Baba was around, he was not available all the time to meet. But of course, his presence would have answered questions which probably will not even understand that we have understood. in a sense.
Yes, that is one. The second is the how do I put this? The uncertainty that plagues the mind when we do something would be even more confidently resting on him, right? So today we are doing some stuff blindsided, assuming that we're doing the right thing. Obviously, we'll feel a lot more confident that way. But I agree with you. He was not available. He used to write responses, and then in a practical sense, he's available today in that way, right? So, well,
one thing I feel is people who saw him, like my grandfather, he used to say, one look at him and all your doubts are put to rest. Or one look from him on you, and then you have nothing to ask, nothing to say. I don't know if we're missing that part. Yeah. He used to say that his eyes were magnetic. It was something different altogether. So you would just not be able to talk, say anything once you're in his presence. So I think that part at least we are missing, maybe.
Yes.
Jai Baba, just to supplement to what Sunil said, he's absolutely correct. And it happens not only with Meher Baba, it happens with all perfect masters. Any of the self-realized souls like I've heard stories of with Nisargadatta Maharaj or Ramana Maharishi, where people go with a lot of questions. And you go in their presence, your mind becomes still because there's nothing to ask. You even forget the fact that you came there with a list of questions. Only after you have left that place, you suddenly realize, oh my God, there was no need. The answers sometimes were subliminally given. On another note, uh, Baba has clearly said that for the next 100 years, he is in the formless aspect. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, he's actually has given me a lot of answers. Yes, definitely between a choice of seeing Baba in embodied form and he being in the formless aspect right now, of course, we will gravitate towards the body, because as you rightly said, that uh, being in the presence of Baba itself is, you go speechless. I mean, it's magical. So I think that's definitely true. But I think we want to be cognizant of the fact that we are very lucky because Baba himself said that I am available to all and sundry much more than I was when I was in the physical form. I don't know where the reference is, but I've read this. So, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
And we must find ourselves very lucky that we are in touch with the people who have been with him. After another 100 years, that even that will not be there. Jai Baba.
Yeah, sooner actually, right? So
Yeah.
already we are losing so many people
Sooner.
who
Yes.
had personal
Yeah.
contact. So
Yes.
you're so right. I mean, yeah.
Yes, Jai Baba.
Yeah. Okay, so on that poignant note, let's get to the next chapter, 258 on the physical book, page number 258. The chapter is Deeper Aspects of Sadhana. For the first subtitle is Transition to Deeper Aspects of Sadhana. For most persons, spiritual sadhana or practice consists in the external observance of rituals and ceremonies prescribed by their own religion. In the initial stages, such observance has its own value as a factor contributing towards self-purification and mental discipline. But ultimately, the aspirant has to transcend the phase of external conformity and become initiated into the deeper aspects of spiritual sadhana. When this happens, the external aspect of religion falls into the background and the aspirant gets interested in the essentials revealed in all the great religions. True sadhana consists in a life that is based upon spiritual understanding, and it comes to a person who's truly keen about spiritual realities. Diversity of sadhanas. Sadhana must never be regarded as consisting in the application of rigid laws. Just as in life, there cannot be and need not be strict and unrelieved uniformity. In spiritual life, there is ample room for diversity of sadhanas. The sadhana that is useful for a particular aspirant is bound to be related to his sanskaras and temperament. And so, although the spiritual goal for all is the same, the sadhana of a given aspirant may be peculiar to himself. However, since the goal is the same for all, the differences with regard to sadhana are not of vital importance, and the deeper aspects of sadhana have importance for all aspirants in spite of their differences. Sadhana in spiritual and material realms. Sadhana in the spiritual realm is bound to be essentially different from sadhana in the material field because the end is intrinsically different. The end sought in the material field is a product that has its beginning and end in time. The end sought in the spiritual realm is a completeness that transcends the limitations of time. Therefore, in the material field, sadhana is directed toward the achievement of something that is yet to be. But in spiritual life, it is directed toward the realization of which always has been, will ever be, and now is. I just love this line. Yeah. Goal of spiritual sadhana. The spiritual goal of life is to be sought in life itself and not outside life. Thus, sadhana in the spiritual realm has to be such that it brings one's life closer to the spiritual ideal. Sadhana in the spiritual realm does not aim at the achievement of a limited objective, which may have its day and then ingloriously disappear forever. It aims at bringing about a radical change in the quality of life so that one's life permanently becomes an expression of the truth in the eternal now. Sadhana is spiritually fruitful if it succeeds in bringing the life of the individual in tune with the divine purpose, which is to enable everyone to enjoy consciously the bliss of the God state. Sadhana has to be completely adapted to this end. Perfect sadhana merges into the goal. In the spiritual realm, every part of sadhana must aim at the realization of the spiritual goal of securing godliness in all phases of life. Therefore, the different aspects of spiritual sadhana will, from one point of view, represent different gradations of spiritual perfection. Sadhana is perfect to the extent to which it expresses the spiritual ideal, that is, the degree to which it resembles the perfect life. Thus, the greater the disparity that exists between the sadhana and the ideal at which it aims, the less perfect it is. The less disparity that exists between sadhana and the ideal at which it aims, the more perfect it is. When sadhana is perfect or complete, it merges into the goal, a spiritually perfect life, so that the division of means and end is swallowed up in an inviolable integrity of indivisible being. Sadhana as partial participation in goal. The relation between spiritual sadhana and the end sought through it may be contrasted with the relation that exists between them in the material field. In the material field, the end usually more or less entirely outside the sadhana. I'll repeat that line. The relation between spiritual sadhana and the end sought through it may be contrasted with the relation that exists between them in the material field. In the material field, the end usually falls more or less entirely outside the sadhana through which it is secured. And there is a clear disparity of nature between the sadhana and the end achieved through it. Thus, pulling the trigger of a gun may become a means of killing a person, but killing someone is essentially different from the pulling of the trigger. In the spiritual realm, however, the sadhana and the end sought through it cannot be completely external to each other, and there is no clear disparity of nature between them. In the spiritual realm, it's not possible to maintain an unbridgeable gulf between sadhana and the end sought through it. This gives rise to the fundamental paradox that in spiritual life, the practicing of a sadhana in itself amounts to a partial participation in the goal. Hence, it becomes understandable why many of the spiritual sadhanas have to be taken seriously as if they were, in themselves, the goal.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Amazing.
Lines. Jai Baba. Amazing.
Yeah. Sadhanas of knowledge, action, and love. In its deeper aspects, spiritual sadhana consists in following: 1. The yoga of knowledge, jnana; 2. The yoga of action, karma; and 3. The yoga of devotion or love, bhakti. The sadhana of knowledge finds its expression through the exercise of detachment born of true understanding, the different forms of meditation, and the constant use of discrimination and intuition. Each of these modes through which the spiritual knowledge is sought or expressed requires explanatory comments. The first under that is detachment. The individual soul is entangled in the world of forms and does not know itself as one with the being of God. This ignorance constitutes the bondage of the soul, and spiritual sadhana must aim at securing emancipation from this bondage. External renunciation of the things of this world is therefore often counted among the sadhanas that lead to liberation. Though such external renunciation may have its own value, it is not absolutely necessary. What is needed is internal renunciation of craving for the things of this world. When craving is given up, it matters little whether the soul has or has not externally renounced the things of this world, because the soul has internally disentangled itself from the illusory world of forms and has prepared itself for the state of mukti or liberation. Detachment is an important part of the sadhana of knowledge. Meditation is another means through which spiritual knowledge is sought. Meditation should not be regarded as some odd pursuit peculiar to dwellers in caves. Every person finds himself meditating on something or another. The difference between such natural meditation and the meditation of an aspirant is that the latter is systematic and organized thinking about things that have spiritual importance. Meditation as sadhana may be personal or impersonal. Meditation is personal when it is concerned with one who is spiritually perfect. A suitable object for personal meditation may be taken, according to the inclination of the aspirant, from among the living or past perfect masters or the avatar. Through such personal meditation, the aspirant imbibes all the divine qualities and the spiritual knowledge of the master. Since it involves love and self-surrender, personal meditation invites the grace of the master, which alone can give final realization. So the sadhana of personal meditation not only makes the aspirant similar to the master on whom he meditates, but also prepares his way to be united with the master in the truth. Impersonal meditation is concerned with the formless and infinite aspect of God. This may lead a person toward the realization of the impersonal aspect of God, but on the whole, this meditation becomes barren unless the aspirant has been duly prepared by the pursuit of personal meditation and a life of virtue. In the ultimate realization of infinity, there is neither the limitation of personality nor the distinction of the opposites of good and evil. In order to achieve realization, one has to pass from the personal to the impersonal and from goodness to God, who is beyond the opposites of good and evil. Another condition of attaining truth through impersonal meditation is that the aspirant should be able to make his mind absolutely still. This becomes possible only when all the diverse sanskaras, impressions, in the mind have vanished. As the final wiping out of the sanskaras is possible only through the grace of a master, the master is indispensable for success, even along the path of impersonal meditation. Use of discrimination and intuition. The sadhana of knowledge or jnana remains incomplete unless the aspirant exercises constant discrimination and unveils his highest intuitions. Realization of God comes to the aspirant who uses discrimination as well as his intuitions about true and lasting values. Infinite knowledge is latent in everyone, but it has to be unveiled. The way to increase knowledge is to put into practice that bit of spiritual wisdom a person may already happen to have. The teachings that have come to humanity through the masters of wisdom and the inborn sense of values that the aspirant brings with him shed sufficient light upon the next step the aspirant has to take. The difficult thing is to act upon the knowledge he has. One of the best methods of adding to one's own spiritual wisdom is to make use of the knowledge one already has. If the sadhana of knowledge is to be fruitful, it must be implemented at every step by due emphasis on action. Everyday life must be guided by discrimination and inspired by the highest intuitions. So that's Jnana Yoga. Importance of action.
Sorry, question. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Said knowledge is latent in humans somewhere. I think about a para up. And Kama also keeps saying love is latent in all of us. How do we explain what that latent stuff is? Any additional explanation of just besides saying it's latent, knowledge is latent, you just have to realize it. And we said it earlier, we already are God, but we don't realize it. That latent part, I struggle to understand a bit. I think we read just now that knowledge is already latent. A little further up.
Okay.
Can you do Control F and see the word latent?
Yeah.
Page 261, last one. Read out this statement. Go down, page 261. It's the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Infinite knowledge is latent in everyone. Yeah.
So, Jai Baba.
Kama?
Yeah.
You want to respond to Sunil? What is latent?
Yeah. Basically, the way I look at it is very simple. Excuse me. When we talk about infinite knowledge is part of Satchitananda. Satchitananda is infinite power.
You got to come closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, better.
Way better. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So let me go back again. The question was about infinite knowledge is latent in everyone. Divine love is latent in everyone, but it has to be unveiled. So the way we can look at it is that the word Satchitananda, which is the experience of infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss, is the highest goal of every drop soul of human being. Self-realization, God realization implies experiencing Satchitananda, which is the second stage of Fana, called Fana Phila, because the first stage is Nirvana, which is Manonaj, and then we experience Satchitananda. Now, the interesting thing is that if you look at, again, going back to the most original whim, Paramatma, basically the ocean of love, the universal self, you know, all the drop souls are part of the universal self or the oversoul. So each drop soul, like a hologram, you know, like a fractal, is just like taking a molecule of water or a spoonful of water from the ocean. The qualities are the same. So the real I self is already within us. That realized self, because of the whim, got entangled in the most finite first impression called Who Am I? So this Satchitananda, infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss, is already within us, which is what we call as oils, our innermost loving self. That is another way of expressing God, because in the seven realities, from the real existence and the real love, we know there are different aspects of God. And one of the attributes we talk about is Satchitananda. So the realized self is covered by this sanskaras, evolutionary sanskaras, which we have gained through different kingdoms. And that is what it means, that infinite knowledge is latent in everyone, but it has to be unveiled. Same thing what Baba says, I have not come here to teach, I've come here to awaken. Now let's try to understand, what does he mean by awakening? He's awakening the latent divinity, God, godliness, godhood, or divinity, or God. This is the game of duality, to get over duality. So Satchitananda, infinite power, knowledge, and bliss is already latent within us. The divine love is latent within us. And that is why this particular sentence, that it has to be unveiled, to be awakened. I don't know whether I made myself clear. Jai Baba.
My analogy that I have taken for this is, if you have learned some skill like cycling and haven't practiced after several years, or haven't practiced for several years, suddenly if you get into a situation of like mode of commuting, and only cycle was available, you just pick up that skill from nowhere. It lies, that skill or that knowledge of cycling lies within you somewhere, even though you haven't practiced. So just like this, our good spiritual value system, or the intuitions, or the insights, are there with us in every life that we have taken. So the knowledge is there with us, and we are also God. So somewhere we have all those things, but we don't know that we know all those things. When the situation arises, the solution suddenly comes up, or if it is very tough and we go and ask the master, or even if we go and pray, nobody else comes and tells, but it comes out automatically from within. So I feel like latent knowledge is there with us all the time, and it is just the situation, or we haven't practiced it, and if needed, it will come. And Guru is the one, or the avatar is the one who knows exactly where we need to get into to the ultimate goal, and opens that up for us.
I kind of understand, but still a little bit struggling. Yeah, Sanjay, the additional explanation or
Yeah, actually,
Can I
Kabir, he compares that real self to a chadar, a white sheet which gets dirty over the period of time. That is sanskaras, and then you take that to your guru, and he cleans it up. So that real thing was there already with you. Yeah, Jai Baba.
Can I say something?
Yes, yes,
So
Sanjay,
basically,
go ahead. Rajesh, go ahead.
Rajesh. So I think we all know that we are a combination of gross body, subtle body, mental body, and also soul, right? Gross body will finish. We all know that it finishes, right? Mental body and subtle body also, we know that these are impressions actually. I mean, not impressions, but mental body is there, which is thoughts, emotions, everything. Intellect is mental body, right? And also we have soul, which is covered with sanskaras. So latent. So if we take out everything, you take out gross body, subtle body, mental body, what is left? Soul. Soul is part of the oversoul, and that is the truth. That is what is meant by latent within every self, actually. So basically, yeah, that's the way I look at it. Is the leftover, I mean, that's the nucleus of everything, or nucleus which is everywhere, which
Understood.
which we are not able to understand clearly, because we are surrounded by all these things. We are surrounded by gross body, subtle body, mental body, and and sanskaras together, all four things. And one day everything will go, except what will remain is the soul, which is already there everywhere all the time. And that's why Baba said, I am not this body, I am not this mind, I am the existence, consciousness, and bliss. And like this, every saint or Sadguru has said, whether it is Nisargadatta Maharaj or is it Ramana Maharshi or any other saint, everybody has said the same thing. That is the self, which is everywhere. Jai Baba. That's how I understand it.
Jai Baba. Thank you, Rajesh. I understood this point. I understood what Jayanti said, what Sanjayji said, but what value is this word latent of us if we don't know that it exists? Is probably my question. I understand what you said. Jayanti also said it's somewhere there, but we don't know it. Somebody will unveil it. God will unveil it, or when we reach that stage, seventh plane, it'll come out, shine. But in the teaching, we keep repeating this word. Love is already latent, but we don't know where it is. Infinite knowledge is already latent, but we don't know where it is. It's covered, but this word is being used repeatedly. Latent is latent in you. So what value is it of to me if I don't have it, if I don't know it? I already know I need to work my butt out to reach next plane or the third, fourth, fifth plane, and I don't have it.
So,
Baba,
Sunilji,
Baba
you have to
said this.
fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So believe
Okay,
it is there.
Baba,
Fake it till you
Baba
make it.
also said, Baba
Yeah.
also said that sum total of everything is zero. Actually, there's nothing. So when you ask this question that what it makes to me, that question is itself wrong. There's nothing. Sum total is everything is zero.
Okay. Once we understood that, I will be there.
So it's something like, when I was reading this some books, so it's explained that something like a pond, right? If the pond is left like it is covered by green moss. You put your hand and clean the green moss. You can see the water and you can see the moon, everything there. The moment you leave it, the moss again covers the water. So our mind is something that it will again go back to, it will get covered. So unless you clean it 100 times or 1,000 times or million times, you won't be able to see it. So you have to keep doing it
Okay,
to see that latent, thing, what is hidden there.
Maybe there are times at which we can see and then it gets covered again and then we try
Yes,
again.
exactly. And, you see it and it gets covered. See it and it gets covered. So the only way to that is whether you do bhakti yoga, you karma yoga, whatever you keep repeating these things, and then only you will see the clarity. Then you don't need to remove it also.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
That's why
Sunil, I identify with your frustrations.
Part of the process, I guess. Yeah.
I think
Jai
so
Baba,
too. Yeah.
Yeah, on page 347, this is in Discourses Task for Spiritual Workers, where there are 4 different kinds of rendering spiritual help. You should have a clear understanding of the following 4 points. I would like to read the 3rd point. It says, the first point was, of course, apparent descent to the lower level. Second was spiritual understanding ensures all-sided progress. And number 3 is spiritual progress consists in the spontaneous growth of understanding from within. Spiritual progress consists in the spontaneous growth of understanding from within. As spiritual workers, you have also to remember that the spiritual wisdom you desire to convey to others is already latent in them, and that you have only to be instrumental in unveiling that spiritual wisdom. Let me repeat this. As spiritual workers, you have also to remember that the spiritual wisdom you desire to convey to others is already latent in them, and that you have only to be instrumental in unveiling that spiritual wisdom. Spiritual progress is not a process of accumulating from without, it is a process of accumulating from within. A perfect master is absolutely necessary for anyone to arrive at self-knowledge, but the true significance of the help given by the master consists in the fact that he enables others to come into the full possession of their own latent possibilities. So this itself is a very clear indication that, you can actually, everything is latent. And so, there's a very self-explanatory aspect out here. So coming back to what Rajesh said, see, one is material knowledge. See, let's say we become an engineer, doctor, lawyer. We go get a degree, which is only 1% right knowledge. But then after 8 years, you go and work for 40 years in the industry. That is what you put into practice. The material knowledge that you have gained has to be put into practice. Similarly, with spiritual knowledge, depending on which teacher you come across and imbibe their teachings. So the spiritual knowledge is also about 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So I think I can understand Sunil's quandary. I think he wants to have that intellectual conviction, what does this particular sentence mean? And then, hopefully you will get that grace, and then you will have to practice it, you have to implement it. That's what we are all doing. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Understood. Thank you. I think it was clearer. Helped. Thank you.
So latently clear or patently clear or?
I think Karthik is also having the similar doubt.
No, because you only said things.
All clear.
I think I'm clear. So
I see. Okay, you're catching me on my words. Okay. I think I like the words Sanjayji said. Fake it till you make it. So I'll fake it from now.
yes,
It's
there.
already there. It's there.
You don't have to fake it. You have to do it selflessly. Even after years of service, right? Iruj, right? One day towards the end, he asked Baba, people come and ask me, what did I gain out of, giving whole my life? What did I gain? So Baba put him a question, told him that, people have put a wrong question to you. They should not have asked you, what did you gain? They should have asked you, what did you lose? So unless you lose your sanskaras, everything, right? Unless you dissolve everything, you won't be able to understand anything.
Got it. Let's dissolve our sanskaras. Yes.
It's not easy. It's not easy. So we keep going back again and again. But I have one question actually. I don't know if anybody can answer. We are in this form today and we see the present. I don't see my past, how many lives I've taken to reach here, whatever past lives or whatever. And I don't see the future. I left maybe I don't know, few years. And after that, I'm gone. So whatever I'm reading today, and I don't think I can realize in this life. I mean, I don't know. But where do I go? I mean, everything will be left here. I mean, I don't know. That's question I always keep asking myself. What's going to come? What's next?
Rajesh, this is already answered by Baba. There was a question Mani asked, and there is a video of Mani talking about this subject. When she asked Baba that after people drop their body and take new births, do they have to find you again, or what happens to them? So Baba has given a beautiful expression of his hand actually, with Mani imitates in that video. He says they only progress to the next. It's never lost. So don't worry, keep doing. Jai Baba. So that's yeah. So spiritual progress is not lost. Yeah, Jai Baba.
Yeah, Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba,
Let
if
me-
I understood Rajesh's question, I think he was saying that we all know that we go through multiple reincarnations as a male or female in different cycles of time, in the Orient or the Occidental, whatever. And right now, you are a particular individual soul of a particular gender with certain types of sanskaras. And we are spending sanskaras or unwinding sanskaras. Of course, that is based on past karma. And we are also now going through this process of life. And he's also saying that I don't think I will attain moksha or mukti, which from my side perspective, I say, no, we are all self-realized. Okay, number one, why? Because we have taken the human form. Of course, we are not completely self-realized. We are in the path. In bits and pieces, consciously or unconsciously, you feel connected with the universal self. When you feel bliss, you're even unconscious of it when it's happening.
Yeah.
So the question here is, the fear is, hey, you know what? If I'm not going to self-realize in this lifetime, I might have to take other lifetimes. And what's in store for me? And I think Sanjay answered it beautifully. As Baba said, once you're with me under my umbrella, then it's all about the provisional working ego. You got to keep buying the lottery ticket. You have to make the effort, the sadhana.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what this chapter is all about. The material sadhana and spiritual sadhana. Material sadhana is your goal is to make a couple of $1 million and retire. If you have done it, but your samskara says, no, I want to make 100 million, then it's a different kind of challenge. But once you have achieved your material sadhana, which is to take care of your family and yourself and fulfill the Maslow's hierarchy till about self-esteem, and you have Baba on your side now, then it's all about spiritual sadhana, and that is about living on the edge of a sword. So actually you should, I shouldn't say you, I'm talking about myself, that I look at myself as an actor right now. Like the Shakespearean 7 stages of life. You wake up in the morning, put on a uniform. Today I'm in Rameshwaram with my 92-year-old dad and 82-year-old uncle. That is why sometimes you see some disturbance. And the interesting thing is, when you're with older people who have very conditioned mind, it's a challenge. So I have to take it like a play. I really have to use Baba's postulates to be able to relate with them in such a way that I'm trying to do intelligent action most of the time. Sometimes I get very angry, and then I tell myself, hey, that's not right, and if I start looking at each one of them as the realized self. So I think, again, coming back to Baba's aspect of the awakening, that we are all awakened, that we are all self-realized, but not awakened all the time. Once in a while we are awakened, that itself is good enough. I don't have to score 100%. I can score 35 and pass. So you sleep for 10 hours a day, blissful sleep, you're fine, So enjoy, like one last quote, Ramakrishna said, don't ask where the mango came from. Just enjoy the mango and taste it, So enjoy life, Jai Baba.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Kama. Yeah, got it. Jai Baba.
Rajeshji, if I may just add to all what has been said, that also your question is answered in the supplement 19, page 238 of God Speaks. That also might be relevant to what you asked. We will not take the time here, but you can read it.
Yeah, I'll go through it. Yeah. Thank you, Ashokji.
Welcome.
Okay, so all anxieties, frustrations of the aspirants coming to the fore, right from Rajesh, Sunil, and now Kama. So, so with that out of the way, let's continue and figure out what karma yoga is. importance of action. So how much time do we have? Yeah. So importance of action is the subtitle, and I'll continue reading. Karma Yoga, or the yoga of action, consists in acting according to the best intuitions of the heart without fear or hesitation. In sadhana, what counts is practice and not mere theory. Sound practice is far more important than sound theory. Practice based upon right knowledge will, of course, be more fruitful, but even a mistake in a practical direction may have its own valuable lessons to bring. Mere theoretical speculation, however, remains spiritually barren, even it is flawless. Thus, a person who's not very learned, but who sincerely takes the name of God and does his humble duties wholeheartedly, may actually be nearer to God than one who knows all the metaphysics of the world, but does not allow any of his theories to modify his everyday life. There's an illustrative story. The difference between the comparative importance of theory and practice in the realm of sadhanas may be brought about by means of a well-known story of an ass. An ass who was plodding along a road for a long time and was very hungry happened to see two heaps of grass, one at some distance on the right side of the road and the other at some distance on the left side of the road. Now, the ass thought it was of utmost importance to be absolutely certain which of the two heaps was clearly the better before he could intelligently decide to go to one heap rather than the other. If he decided without thorough thinking and without having sufficient grounds for his preference, that would be impulsive action and not intelligent action. Therefore, he first considered the distance at which the two heaps were respectively placed from the road he was treading. Unfortunately for him, after elaborate consideration, he concluded that the heaps were equally distant from the road. So he wondered if there were some other consideration that might enable him to make the right choice, and speculated upon the respective sizes of the heaps. Even with the second attempt to be theoretically sure before acting, his efforts were not crowned with success because he concluded that both heaps were of equal size. Then, with the tenacity and patience of an ass, he considered other things, such as the quality of the grass. But as fate would have it, in all the points of comparison he could think of, the two heaps turned out to be equally desirable. Ultimately, it happened that since the ass could not discover any deciding factor that would make his preference appear theoretically sound, he did not go to either of the two heaps, but went straight ahead, hungry and tired as before, and not a whit better off for having come upon two heaps of grass. If the ass had gone to one heap without insisting upon the theoretical certainty of having chosen wisely, he might perhaps have gone to the heap that was not as good as the other, and despite any mistakes in his intellectual judgment, he would have been infinitely better off from a practical point of view. In the spiritual life, it is not necessary to have a complete map of the path in order to begin traveling. On the contrary, insistence upon having such complete knowledge may actually hinder rather than help the onward march. The deeper secrets of spiritual life are unraveled to those who take risks and who make bold experiments with it. These are not meant for the idler who seeks guarantees for every step. Those who speculate from the shore about the ocean shall only know its surface, but those who would know the depths of the ocean must be willing to plunge into it. Selfless service. Fulfillment of the sadhana of Karma Yoga requires that action should spring from the perception of the truth. Enlightened action does not bind because it is not rooted in the ego and is selfless. Selfishness represents ignorance, while selflessness is a reflection of the truth. The real justification for a life of selfless service is to be found in this intrinsic worth of such a life and not in any ulterior result or consequence. The paradox of selfless action is that it actually brings to the aspirant much more than could ever come within the purview of ignorant selfishness. Selfishness leads to a narrow life that revolves around the false idea of a limited and separate individual, whereas selfless action contributes toward the dissipation of the illusion of separateness and turns out to be the gateway to the unlimited life, where there is realization of all selfness. What a person has may be lost, and what he desires to have may never come to him. But if he parts with something in the spirit of an offering to God, it has already come back to him. Such is the sadhana of Karma Yoga. The third path, love. Even more important than the sadhanas of knowledge and action is the sadhana of love, bhakti. Love is its own excuse for being. It is complete in itself and does not need to be supplemented by anything. The greatest saints have been content with their love for God, desiring nothing else. Love is not love if it is based upon any expectation. In the intensity of divine love, the lover becomes one with the divine beloved. There is no sadhana greater than love. There is no law higher than love. And there is no goal that is beyond love. For love in its divine state becomes infinite. God and love are identical. And one who has divine love already has God. Through effort to effortlessness, love may be regarded as being equally a part of sadhana and a part of the goal. The intrinsic worth of love is so obvious that it is often considered a mistake to look upon it as a sadhana for some other end. In no sadhana is the merging in God so easy and complete as in love. When love is the presiding genius, the path to truth is effortless and joyous. As a rule, sadhana involves effort and sometimes even desperate effort, as in the case of an aspirant who may strive for detachment in the face of temptations. In love, though, there is no sense of effort because it is spontaneous. Spontaneity is the essence of true spirituality. The highest state of consciousness in which the mind is completely merged in the truth is known as Sahajavastha, the state of unlimited spontaneity in which there is uninterrupted self-knowledge. One of the paradoxes connected with spiritual sadhana is that all effort of the aspirant is intended for arriving at a state of effortlessness. Story of the Kasturi Mriga. There is a beautiful story of a Kasturi Mriga or musk deer that brings out the nature of all spiritual sadhana. Once, while roaming about and frolicking among hills and dales, the Kasturi Mriga was suddenly aware of an exquisitely beautiful scent, the like of which it had never known. The scent stirred the inner depths of its soul so profoundly that it determined to find the source. So keen was its longing that notwithstanding the severity of cold or the intensity of scorching heat, by day as well as by night, the deer carried on its desperate search for the source of the sweet scent. It knew no fear or hesitation, but undaunted went on its elusive search until at last, happening to lose its foothold on a cliff, it had a precipitous fall, resulting in a fatal injury. While breathing its last, the deer found that the scent that had ravished its heart and inspired all these efforts came from its own navel. This last moment of the deer's life was its happiest, and there was on its face inexpressible peace. The goal of sadhana is self-knowledge. All spiritual sadhanas of the aspirant are like the efforts of the Kasturi Mriga. The final fructification of sadhana involves the termination of the ego life of the aspirant. At that moment, there is the realization that he himself has, in a sense, been the object of all his search and endeavor. All that he suffered and enjoyed, all his risks and adventures, all his sacrifices and desperate strivings were intended for achieving true self-knowledge, in which he loses his limited individuality only to discover that he is really identical with God, who is in everything. Jai Baba. So I think that brings us to the end of this chapter. Any questions? We're almost out of time as well. So any quick comments, questions? And we'll wrap up for the day.
Comment, Karthik, is that what lies within you is more important than what lies without you. I mean, outside you.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So if we don't have any other comments or questions, we can wrap up. Yes, there is the 4 o'clock God Speaks session. For those of you who are free, jump in on Google Meet. And don't forget the assignment that we have for this week on Nirvana, Sahaja Samadhi, and the details of the assignment is on Telegram. With that, we'll wrap up, and all of you have a great week ahead, and let's catch up on Saturday.
Jai Baba, can we just summarize this
Kama.
chapter? Because I think otherwise it would be just a reading.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Kama.
So I think that this chapter flows from the previous chapter where we understood the importance of the provisional working ego as a very practical technique. This chapter, the deeper aspects of sadhana, there are two kinds of sadhana. One is in your material life, one is in your spiritual life. The only difference is in material life, there is a beginning and there is an end, which are different. Whereas in spiritual sadhana, it is the journey. The journey itself, where I think the way it's given is that this gives rise to the fundamental paradox that in spiritual life, the practicing of a sadhana in itself amounts to a partial participation in the goal. Hence, it becomes understandable why many of the spiritual sadhanas have to be taken seriously as if they were in themselves the goal. Very interesting point. This is on page 260, first para. And also, I think sadhana of knowledge, action, and love is about head, hands, and heart. Jnana yoga, knowledge, action, hands, selfless service, and love, bhakti yoga, devotion. And we have those 3 prayers for that. Now, beautifully, Baba has segmentized these 3 hands, head, heart, hands. What are the different components to knowledge, which is Vivek and Vairagya, detachment is an important part of the sadhana of knowledge. And also practice is also important because the theory part is only 1%. And then he also talks about the sadhana of personal meditation and impersonal meditation. And that one, the aspirant has been duly prepared by the pursuit of personal meditation and a life of virtue before he goes into the impersonal aspect of God. I think this has also been discussed in the different chapters on meditation. So this particular subtitle meditation under page 261 is a summary of almost all the different chapters we read, the 8 parts that we read in meditation. And of course, in the sadhana of knowledge, discrimination and intuition is very important. And then when it comes to karma yoga, again, practice is more important than theory. We know that. And then, of course, we know about selfless service. And then he has used the analogy of the ass that you don't have to have perfect knowledge. Whatever you have, use it. That is why I think that question from Sunil was very important, is that the way to increase knowledge is to put into practice that bit of spiritual wisdom a person may already happen to have. So the third and final is, of course, the sadhana of love or bhakti. Love is its own excuse for being. See, everything is about love, whatever we are doing. It's not just love of the perfect master. That's Baba has said, you can't love me the way I want you to love me, because that is again Baba's grace. And also we know about pure love, which is the gift of the perfect master. You have to eliminate those 7 deadly sins, and probably one can have the gift of pure love, where you can be completely using bhakti yoga 100% and don't need any kind of knowledge, whether it's God speaks or discourses. And we have examples of Mirabai, Tukaram, and so on. And then, of course, the most beautiful thing is one of the paradoxes connected with spiritual sadhana is that all effort of the aspirant is intended for arriving at a state of effortlessness. This is what the spontaneity is all about, being natural, organic. So Baba has said intense effort and infinite patience, which will lead to a state of effortlessness. So without sadhana practice, we can't dissolve our sanskaras. Baba is like a life coach guiding us. He gives us the push. In fact, he has said that I can't change your destiny, but I can give you inner strength. So that is the bottom line. And of course, the last part, he says, all that he suffered and enjoyed, all his risks and adventures, all his sacrifices and desperate strivings were intended for achieving true self-knowledge, in which he loses his limited individuality only to discover that he is really identical with God, who is in everything. So God is all the different aspects, self, truth, infinity, existence, and so on. So I look at it more like a treasure hunt. We are all like little kids, with our big egos trying to find that real treasure now that Baba is telling us to awaken within us. Jai Baba.
I'm speaking on mute.
Yeah, thanks for that beautiful summary. Any other comments from anybody before we wrap up? No. So thanks everybody. Jai Baba, and have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Jai Baba.
Thank you.
Jai Baba, everyone. Jai Baba. Thank you.